Welcome to the new Cyber Frontier, bringing you the latest news on the local Colorado economy and initiatives that focus on the development of cybersecurity economics. You don't have to be a computer or cybersecurity expert to get plugged in. Your host, Chris Gorog, brings it straightforward, asks the tough questions, and brings the cyber world to a level of understanding for everyone. Chris is personable and opens up with our guests on issues we all would like to see addressed. You can find us on the web at www.newcyberfrontier.com. Now join our host as he introduces the topic for today's new Cyber Frontier.
Hello, this is Abe Thompson from New Cyber Frontier, coming to you from the Secure Set studios here in Colorado Springs. Today we have the distinct privilege of having with us the Vice President of the Pueblo Economic Development Corporation, Joe O'Brien. It's a pleasure to have you on board.
Thank you.
So, Joe, how did you find yourself in Colorado and then in the sort of the economic development advocacy role?
I moved here in 1995 as part of my company that was from back east.
Sure.
We were a land development company, and we expanded our territory, so to speak, to move out here. So I came out in mid-1995. And at that point in time, we primarily were doing a lot of what we would call recreation land development, but pretty much all over the state of Colorado, with really focusing on southern Colorado.
Sure.
And being moved originally here actually to Colorado Springs, and then moved down to Pueblo, primarily because of the first ranch that we were developing, and that's kind of what we did, was just outside of Pueblo.
Sure.
And during that early years, I've always been very much involved in the community. That I came originally from Massachusetts, then up to Maine, and then out here. Always thought and was involved in a lot of economic development type situations. So it was really unique in the sense that when I moved to Pueblo, one of the first organizations I actually came upon was the Pueblo Economic Development Corporation. And the way it's set up in Pueblo, it's a private nonprofit, but it's based on its membership. So it's a lot of the funding comes from its membership. And so I literally joined the economic development as a company in 1995. Over the course of the next, let's say, 20 years or so, I was involved with various parts of that, and started getting involved with they have a marketing committee, they have a membership committee, but getting more involved with the economic development aspect of it, more personal, I guess, more involved with the business, I guess. And I was elected to the board. There is a board, fairly sizable board, but I think it was 2002, I was elected to the board of directors for Pedco, as we call it. And during that time period, I was involved more on the intricacies of what happens at Pedco. And so it's the organization is to try to attract businesses, and I've always been involved in that. So as my career for the development part kind of was getting to an end, I was in literally the business for 33 years. I was looking for something to maybe wind down a little bit, and found that at about 4 years ago now, the current president, which is Jeff Shaw, had it kind of goes through some phases, but he became the president of the staff, and he asked me if I'd be interested in coming on board, primarily because I have a lot of marketing experience. It's what I did for our company in the land development business, but also had a lot of construction background. We did a lot of different things in my career, one of which was some of the construction of condominiums, those kind of projects, in addition to land development. So for me, it was a very natural progression to get to come to the organization. So I've been there, it'll be 5 years now, and at the end of this year, or going into next year. But I always had a relationship, or at least I found that it was very important to have, as a business, to be part of trying to attract businesses as a member, but then kind of naturally progressed into the staff level, which now I work primarily with bringing clients or customers or companies in to Pueblo to attract them there, and also help with the marketing of our Petco.
Yeah, sure. And you'd also mentioned that you have some experience kind of related to the security industry. We here in cybersecurity, of course, having some heritage, whether it's NSA or these other things, but you run a shredding company. Tell me what that's like, types of clients that you interface with.
Yeah, it's a good point. And about 15 years ago, it just so happened my neighbor at the time was a doctor here in Pueblo, and he had talked to me a little bit about, I have this idea, and this is in 2003 or so. And that being in that business, in the HIPAA business, I guess, or in the medical part, he said, there seems to be a need for, a type of destruction or document destruction type company, and what do you think about that idea? And I've always been kind of an entrepreneur in a sense, because our company, as our development company was set up, it was basically you set up your own company, became a partner, and then you just basically managed the projects and the company. But so I wanted to do something a little different and just to try something new. So I invested myself and Lawrence with our two wives, which we basically call the company Mrs. or Mobile Record Shredders. And we learned a lot about that security end of the business. So over the past literally 15 years, we've developed that company. We're probably the largest locally owned company in southern Colorado.
Sure.
So that part of it, which is obviously security, we have a secure facility where we recycle the paper that we get from our businesses. We shred it and recycle it. And we've actually gotten involved in other parts of, identity protection.
Yeah.
So I've kind of learned a little bit more about that end of things. And so we actually shred for numerous type of companies, Bechtel being one of them,
Sure.
but also a lot of hospitals, a lot of small companies, the hospital at Fort Carson. So we've been involved really in a lot of that development. And back in 2003, even document destruction was a very new industry.
Let's take a quick break if we can for our sponsors.
Cyber Resilience Institute helps build strong cyber communities designed to prevent members from attack. Like building a neighborhood watch, it takes coordination and a sharing community to protect our identities and valuables in the virtual world. Typically, we hear that organizations know they need to do something to protect their cyber assets, but don't know where to begin. Let Cyber Resilience Institute help your community create an action plan. Cyber Resilience Institute will build your community or business marketplace so that it is designed to support a collective cyber defense. Contact them for more information at cyberresilienceinstitute.org.
This is Abe Thompson coming to you from the Secure Set Studios here in Colorado Springs on the new Cyber Frontier. Our guest is Mr. Joe O'Brien, the Vice President of PEDCO, as they call it, or Pueblo Economic Development Corporation. You were just telling me about one of your other businesses you've been involved in with regard to shredding, and it's kind of expanded to an information protect and has a lot of exposure to HIPAA and many things in our cyber space, as we say. And how's that continued for you?
Yeah, it's been great. We started out literally with one truck, one driver, and a couple of salespeople, which are our wives, and we've expanded into now we're a multi-million-dollar sales company with 15 employees. So over the years, it's actually grown very nicely. But I think part of that, and I still say this we're very much involved with the national organization, which is NAID, National Association of Information Destruction. And what we found is that there's still a lot of people out there that don't protect their documents.
Of course.
And it's about, in my mind, about 50% education and the other 50% of, continuing customers and expanding client base, but our existing customers. But that's one of the unique things about the business. We've grown from like one truck to now we have 6.
Sure.
And those go all over southern Colorado. But the important thing that we try to tell our customers, whether they use us or not, that it's so important to have your security protected.
And what types of things are you kind of telling them that are at risk if they don't?
Well, there was some legislation passed last year in Colorado. I couldn't tell you the exact number of the statute, but it was basically where businesses had to, not only do certain things with with their documents and keep them under lock and key and all those kind of things. There's some federal legislation, but the Colorado came up with some state, what I call state legislation, that basically, if a business has any type of security breach, they're liable from a potentially fine standpoint and those kind of things. So what we tried to do, and we offer this service, which we call CRS, which is basically a form of protection, I guess you'd call it. It's through a third party. But the idea is that just having your documents and getting rid of them is not the only thing.
Sure.
So we're trying to tell them that just keep in mind that there's a lot of people out there trying to get other people's identity. You as a business, if you have any types of confidential information, and that just could be an address, could be a name, phone number, those kind of things have to be number one, kept secure,
Right.
but number two, if that information is possibly gotten out to wherever, they need to do certain protocols in order to comply with this new legislation. So the idea of picking up someone's paper, just shredding it, and then that's it, is really, it's kind of evolved into much, much more than that. So we try to keep people educated. We do a lot of education with the local community. We are involved with Crime Stoppers. We do a lot of their stuff for them. We do certain things with the Better Business Bureau, BBB. We're
sure.
actively involved with them here in Colorado Springs. That's where their main office, because they handle both Pueblo and Colorado Springs.
Good.
And every year we do a huge event here for the whole day, pretty much in downtown Colorado Springs, and we also do one in Pueblo. So what we do is we actually advertise a community event.
Yeah.
So even though we might have our own customers, we also go out to the public and say, there's a lot of people out there that bring in, little boxes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Shoe boxes full of stuff. We just say that's as important as anything else. We do gear towards businesses because they're under more, where they might have more paper, obviously. But the idea is we try to educate the community of how important this is and how, hackers are out there. There's all sorts of people dumpster diving. They still do those kind of things. So we try to do a little bit of both. And I still say, I talk to people all over the country in this business, document destruction business, is that they still think, or we still think, that about 50% of the people don't do what they should do. And that, to me, keeps our growth going. We've been nicely growing for ever since we started. We've made more sales every year, and we decided to do what we call a slow growth. Nothing crazy, but over the years, it's been a good company to expand with, primarily because we get out there and try to educate the public.
Well, and as I understand too, the Better Business Bureau is actually establishing a cybersecurity rating now. And certainly businesses like yours are going to be, great at helping people being assessed as secure, or at least, making the best attempt. Obviously, we can never be completely secure.
Absolutely.
I appreciate the involvement with the Colorado Springs Better Business Bureau, though, for sure. Now, with Pedco, you probably look a lot at the outlook for Pueblo and the types of businesses that are come in. How have you seen Pueblo transform from the time you've arrived to now in the tech sector?
Yeah, I think that's a good starting point, because we, as many people might know, Pueblo has been primarily a steel manufacturing town. Our manufacturing is in our blood. Over the last 150 years, the steel mill, which was a major part of our industry, was growing, and then during the early 80s, it actually went off the deep end, literally. Unemployment went to 25%. And the town business leaders actually, and this is how Pedco was born, but the town business leaders said, we can't keep all our eggs in one basket, because at one point the steel mill employed somewhere in the vicinity of 15,000 people, and that was a large employer, very large employer, very important employer, and they still are. They still are a big employer in town, but they're changing. The steel mill is actually going to be next year building a $450 million solar-powered building plant for their rail, which is the rail business has changed a bit there, but the steel mill produces about 40% of all the rail in the United States still.
Wow.
But that being said, a few years ago, and again, over the years, we've been able to attract some different companies, but we have Bechtel down there now. We have ULA, which is aerospace. We have Train. We have it's now Rockwell Collins, but it was UTC. But the more manufacturing type companies have come to town because of Pedco efforts, primarily because we have a half-cent sales tax that we actually tax ourselves, and we can afford to pay in cash, basically, for companies to come to Pueblo with, for their infrastructure, for their building, for equipment. But we also looked about 3 years or so ago. We looked at what type of industry should we be looking at with the new, I want to say new frontier, or the new manufacturing, even though that's still in our blood. What other industries should we be really looking at? And we had what we call a site selector, a very good one, Janet 80 Associates. She came in about 3 years ago, and we basically did kind of an economic impact, community economic impact study. We had her do it. Her company, her dad, I think, started her company, but in the economic development world, it is site selectors are a big part of how we, interact with potentially bringing companies in to the area, just like they do here and at the Colorado Springs Chamber and EDC. So we had her come into town, and over a period of probably several months, almost a year, she interviewed all our companies, looked at different industries, what areas are we weak in, what areas do we need help in. One of the, and everybody will tell you this in the EDC world, is workforce is a huge issue countrywide. And it doesn't matter what part of workforce, everybody is affected. But that being said, we also recognize that we have a changing workforce from a, I guess you would call a millennial standpoint, or from a younger person versus, say, an older person. We are continuing to look into continue to do the, where I guess our DNA is the manufacturing side of things, making things, but we also want to reach out to some of these other areas that we think are important. Right now, we actually, as a result of that impact study, we've kind of focused on 6 different industry clusters, we call it, and I'll just name them, but basically aerospace, defense, chemicals, manufacturing, construction, food and beverage, hemp, outdoor recreation, and rail. And a lot of that is because of our proximity, rail especially, and our infrastructure that we have. We have a very good solid background in some of these areas like construction, and food and beverage is becoming a big thing. But part of that is what we call, like you said, the high-tech, area. I think, just to be honest with everybody, I guess, we're a little behind. We have been behind in that area where, as you know, here in Colorado Springs, very much involved because of the defense and various things like
space.
that. And space. And so we have started and been trying to work with some of these small companies or groups of startup groups, some manufacturing, or not manufacturing, but basically makerspace type groups, trying to interact a little bit more with entrepreneurs, trying to get involved, and a lot of that is involved with the tech side of things, or different types of programs. Now, we work very closely with PCC and Pueblo Community College and with CSUP. CSUP has made a major emphasis in the last couple of years in cybersecurity. I think a little bit lower program, but maybe not as developed as UCCS. But we think, and again, I want to point out that, and talking with some of these companies recently, is that, where do we get those individuals that need the training, know? And so last year, actually, we hired at Pedco, first time, I wouldn't say first time ever, but one of the first times where we hired an individual that's been involved in the workforce training sphere for the last 25 years through the Workforce Center, and had him come in with his wife. A lot of experience, but to start trying to look at where are the areas that we need to focus on for workforce.
Sure.
And part of that is the tech side of things.
Definitely. Let's take a quick break, and we'll go to our sponsor.
Murray Security Services are your cybersecurity experts with decades of experience providing professional training services for our clients in various industries. We offer professional training and certification in areas of cybersecurity, safety, health, and environmental services at our academy. Our in-person and online training provides a collaborative environment where students can interact directly with instructors through live chats or in private classrooms. Visit murraysecurityservices.com for more information.
And we're back here at the SecureSet Studios. I'm Abe Thompson with our guest, Mr. Joe O'Brien, the Vice President of PEDCO, Pueblo Economic Development Corporation, here on New Cyber Frontier. You had just been kind of talking about the evolution of Pueblo and now moving into a clear recognition that a bright light on your horizon is the tech industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know that, I mean, even though we might have cluster industries that may differ a little bit from maybe a direct relationship on the tech side, but all those companies have those needs.
Yeah.
So we're looking at, we really did I thought a very good job of analyzing who do we need in the, literally the next 50 years for employees. And, as everybody knows, we have to kind of start targeting what our strengths are. But I think because of the proximity, and I don't want to, I want to emphasize that we are starting to have and always have had, I think, a good relationship, but working with Colorado Springs EDC and the Chamber EDC, but on the EDC side of Colorado Springs. And the reason for that is, as we have also seen through some of our research and working with Janet 80 at 80 Associates, that it's a region. The workplace is becoming a regional
definitely
thing. So it's not Pueblo and what we do, and then Colorado Springs on what you do. It's really, we're trying to meld that relationship. We recognize that we probably have strengths in our community, or at least good options for companies that may not be the same companies as they are here in Springs, but the relationship and the workforce, the MSA, the areas are where people are reaching to. I mean, there's a lot of people that commute from Pueblo to Colorado Springs, and vice versa.
Yes, absolutely.
And so we're really, we've been great, and actually the Colorado Springs, Dirk has been great to keep us involved, and we're trying to stay involved with them and us together to help with how can we be a region that is a strength for workforce.
Sure.
So you see other communities doing it. You see that trend. It used to be where a company's going to be specifically looking at a city. They're going to look at all the different things that they look at. We're trying to build our base of a good workforce that could provide good workers in all those different categories or all those different arenas.
And a lot of success, I think, can be found in the great relationships we have because of our community college consortium. Pueblo, Pikes Peak Community College, Otero, going farther south, and east and west.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of good cybersecurity work being done there.
Yeah.
Now, when you mentioned before you did this DC FlyIn, what was that like for Pueblo, and kind of what did you bring with you on the?
It was great, and I tell you, there's some of the issues that I think the goal of the Colorado Springs group is to go with some specific issues they need to work on at the federal government level, obviously. Right. But what was intriguing or interesting to me, because of course, we're a part of they split it into 3 or 4 groups. There's a cyber group, there's a defense group, there's the ED group, and I was part of that ED group. Mm-hmm. But we were able to go and meet with some very, I think, very appropriate entities in Washington, one of which was the train. I call it the train group, but that's being headed up by the city council president, I think it's Jill, that we went and met with a group out of Virginia that actually put together basically a commuter train, kind of a whole program of how do they get people, from outside Virginia and say Washington D.C. because of all the traffic issues. Yeah. But we met with them, and the primary reason was, there's been a lot of discussion about bringing train from Pueblo all the way up to Fort Collins.
Yeah.
And so I was involved with that meeting. And so for Pueblo to be part of that because we are part of it. We are part of that group. I'm not personally,
Right.
but to me the benefit in addition to that is for Pueblo, and I was the only representative from Pueblo, but they have invited us every year. I was there last year, is to meet with some of the other people from Colorado Springs that went on the trip.
Yeah.
And I met Chris, and so I think part of that is just the group itself, because there's the county commissioners, the city council, but we met with the National Governors Association, which is
Right.
doing a whole bunch of stuff on workforce training.
Right.
So I got some good ideas for that because everybody needs to find out more resources for that. And we met with the national, I think it was the Chamber of Commerce, or not Chamber of Commerce, Economic Development Undersecretary, but he's doing a big thing with Colorado Springs, and I think it's Jefferson County up in Denver next year to bring in a bunch of companies, or I guess countries in on a big fly-in type situation.
Sure.
But I think the biggest importance for me is keep our relationship so that we kind of have a good idea of what's going on in the world. And Washington, they always say they don't have any money, but they are a source of funding. And so I think for me personally, it's just to get a little bit more where you're meeting people on a more personal basis. But they do a great job. This is that fly-in is, I think, is a fantastic program.
Interesting. Now, Pueblo, of course, has, as you've said, a rich manufacturing history. Are you familiar with what's going on between now cybersecurity and the ANSI standards? Have you heard of any of this?
No, I haven't.
As I understand, what's going to happen now is there's going to be a lot more emphasis inside of manufacturing and ANSI standards specific to sort of the cyber realm. And that's going to, really turn a lot of heads in the manufacturing industry. There's going to be a lot of need for people to be up to speed and aware and concerned about cybersecurity inside of manufacturing. So you could see some.
And really, we would love to be able to have someone come and educate our community. We have a very, I would say, good, diverse, but very active manufacturing community.
Yeah.
So that would be, from my perspective, a good step for your group, I guess, or some group to come, because we do have some of the leading companies in the world that are, they have a plant in Pueblo. Yeah. And they have a Southern Colorado manufacturing group, which some entities up here in Springs are part of.
Yeah.
So could be some great relationships there, and they're always looking, and maybe they already know. I might have to talk to a couple manufacturing guys, but I think that is absolutely, everybody's worried about security.
Sure.
There's no question.
Well, and it's needs to be relevant to every facet of any industry. So, our listening audience is pretty broad. We've, people all over the world, and I'm sure there's probably people out there that, unlike we have the privilege of living in the superior state here in Colorado. There's probably folks that are maybe interested in a change or a move for economic or other reasons. What would you say to kind of encourage them to come Pueblo's way to take a look?
I think, first of all, we have a great, I think just a tremendous amount of recreation in the area. We have the Lake Pueblo State Park. We have the Arkansas River, which is a great fly fishing river, and the downtown with our river walk. But I think the biggest thing for it's a big city with a small town feel, no traffic, and we have great prices on real estate. I think our average real estate now of a house sale is around $180,000.
Wow.
So I think that's far less than many other communities, not just in Colorado, but in other states.
Certainly.
And I think, the 300 days of sunshine. So you have great weather.
Yep.
We have a great amount of recreation. You're literally only 20 minutes from the National Forest area of San Isabel National Forest. So there's a lot of outdoor things that we're pretty much proud of, but also a lot of things to do, a lot of trails at the Lake Pueblo for biking and hiking. So those kind of things. But, it's, to me, and I literally lived, and I grew up in a small town in Massachusetts, lived in a small town in Maine, and did development all over the United States. And when I moved to Pueblo, I would have never thought in my right mind that I would live and move into a city. And now I've been in that city for 25 years.
Yeah.
My kids have been brought up there. And it does have it's 100,000 people, but it's got a small town feel, and everybody's very friendly.
Sure.
And that was something that I stayed, and I probably won't move, but I think for people to come there, there's a diverse culture. We have a lot of Hispanic population, but we also have just a lot of different things to do in the city, much like other areas. But I just think the lack of traffic, the very good real estate prices, and just so much to do in one day or 2 or 3 days, and they should come visit us.
And you've definitely got some workforce feeders down there with the universities. What are the colleges that are represented down there again?
CSUP, Colorado State University, Pueblo, and then we have PCC. PCC's been a great partner, and NCSU as well. PCC does a lot of what we call customized training programs. So when we bring an entity in, we certainly talk to them about, depending on what type of industry that we're talking to. But CSUP, for example, has a great, what we call a railroad industrial engineer program, and the test track, the railroad test track, which is one of the few in the United States, is in Pueblo. So they get just about every industrial engineer coming out of there to go to work there. So depending on the type of thing, and I know CSUP has now beefed up their cybersecurity programs as well as PCC. So as we move forward, they move forward with us. The good news is, from our perspective, both of them are on our board, so they're involved on a monthly basis on any type of activity that we have and what programs that we might be looking for. So they've been great partners.
Excellent, excellent. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you are out there looking at the new cyber frontier and what's next, certainly I believe that Joe Bryan would say give Pueblo a try. He shared with us from his diverse business experience, which included shredding and document protection, identity protection. It's been a pleasure to have you with us, representing, of course, the Pueblo Economic Development Corporation. Joe, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Indeed. This is Abe Thompson from the SecureSat Studios here on the new Cyber Frontier. Good day.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of New Cyber Frontier. Remember, please follow and participate, as New Cyber Frontier is supporting a grassroots community effort to empower the individual in the digital age. Check it out at privacyforthepeople.org. Also, make sure to join our mailing list so we can keep you informed. If you have an idea, if you have a question you would like to hear answered, or if you just want to get involved in what we're doing, reach out to us at newcyberfrontier.com. We also encourage you to visit our sponsors links, because they are the ones that really make this show possible. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode of New Cyber Frontier.